Hi everybody, I'm Tony Wilson here with my good friend and co-host Adrian Wright, and this is
The Supernatural and Beyond.
Okay, here we go. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good information I want to present today. We're going to start off, we're going to be looking in the Book of Enoch. It's one of the most referenced books here on the Supernatural and Beyond. I'm just going to show you a couple of copies. First Enoch here. This is commentary of Enoch, and this is Genesis. I always have to read this one. The synchronized biblical endorsed extra biblical text. Okay.
That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. And what it is that the Book of Enoch has been such a part of our experience and research because it dates all the way back to the Second Temple period, which is the period where Jesus actually walked the face of the earth.
Right.
So all of the scholars and the rabbis, they knew about these books just like we know about them now.
Yes.
So we're going to do a little bit more exploration into it because we reference it so often. But before we get started in that, have some exciting announcements to make. My good friend and co-host, Adrian Wright, is starting...
Who's that?
That's you, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Starting a teaching series.
Yes.
On the Book of Enoch. So
Yes.
we'll be able to go into much greater depth. Right now, we're just going to kind of skim the surface so that you'll have an idea of what it's all about. So all of these things are coming about. They're in the planning phases.
Yes.
And they should be out August, September, but we're not going to put a firm date on it. Keep tab on us on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channels, and
Yes.
we'll be keeping you up to date as to what's going on that. But first, I kind of want to let Adrian kind of strut his stuff.
Okay.
And I have a couple of questions for you.
Yes.
Number one, what is the name of this new series?
I'm just real simple, just calling it the Enoch Teachings.
Enoch Teachings.
Yeah, I'm just keeping it real simple. And then the first series, I'm going to do First Enoch. So, Enoch has 3 books. First Enoch, Second Enoch, Third Enoch. So, going to start, of course, with First Enoch.
First Enoch, okay. So what was the inspiration behind this series?
Honestly, I had a lot of friends that wanted to know more about Enoch. And they were like, teach us more about Enoch. And you should do a video series about it. So I was like, that sounds like a good idea. Because we've talked about it here on the Supernatural and Beyond. We've done some other episodes. You guys can look through our video list and stuff about Enoch. And like you said, he comes up referenced a lot on our show. But yeah, basically they kind of encouraged me. And then you and I were talking a few months ago about looking more depth into other personal projects and stuff like that.
Right.
And then, summer came and I had some free time.
Yeah,
I was
everybody had a little free time, yeah.
So I was like, maybe I should start. And then, of course, Holy Spirit's tapping on me. And he's been tapping on me for a while. So now's the time. Let's do it right now. Now's the moment of salvation. So putting the Enoch books out there right now. And it's a comparison. It's it's an in-depth look of Enoch, and it's where does it compare with the Bible, right? I'm not trying to dispute the Bible or anything like that, and I talk about that in my videos. The Bible's the foundation, we talk about here.
Right, foundation.
The Torah and the New Testament all together is that's the foundation. And so, we're both familiar with that text because we read it, we love it. It's a daily reading for us, and a few years ago, I started reading Enoch, and I was like, this is good. And I've read Enoch a few times, and I'm really interested in Enoch, and I see a lot of relationships, a lot of comparisons to where it folds in,
Yeah, it's, and we'll get into more of that. Let me see. How long have you been working on it?
Honestly, I just started the video series, but it's tying into everything that I've done with Enoch from before. So since I first cracked open Enoch, because when I read something, it kind of goes into my mind and absorbs into my spirit.
Right.
And then, my daily readings with the scripture, I find those links. And so honestly, it's been a project kind of for maybe over a year or more.
Over a year or more? Yeah.
And, you kind of confirmed it a few months ago when you were talking about what other kind of series can I do. And I had a bunch of different friends like from all across the country that were like, we want to know more about Enoch. Can you make some videos about Enoch and kind of go in there? And then Tony talked on his books, and I just wanted to bring up this book, and I used some online references too. But Enoch's free on your app, so you can get a Google app or your iPod, your Apple Play apps, and it's free there. This book is written by Joseph B. Lumpkin. I like it because it breaks it down and it ties in some of the Bible references, and it ties in like some other extra biblical texts like the Book of Watchers, the Book of the Giants, the War Scrolls, Jasher, and some other Jubilees. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, no Jubilees. Problem. And it ties them all in. And this author did a really great job with them. But I probably should crack some of those books too.
Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah, you can never have too large of a library, even if it sits for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. Not a problem, because that's what it's all about. It's not about information you have in your head, but where you can go to access that information.
Right.
So that's one of the things. So all of that sounds really, really exciting. I'm looking forward to the series. It's yet another step of expansion of the supernatural and beyond, bringing this series, the supernatural and beyond. There's some other exciting things that are going to be happening where we'll take it to different platforms to get it even more widespread.
That sounds exciting.
But more on that as the information comes available. So let's get into it. So Adrian, I'm just going to kind of put the ball in your court with this question.
Okay.
Who is Enoch and why is he so important?
Oh, that's a great question, Tony. I'm glad you asked that. Enoch, the seventh from Adam. Okay, so if you look at the genealogies listed in Genesis, there's another Enoch mentioned before.
Enosh.
Well, no, there's another Enoch.
There's another
Enoch? Yeah,
two
it was.
Enoch?
Yeah, two Enochs.
Okay.
So Enoch, seventh from Adam. There's an Enosh too. Enosh.
That's third from Adam.
Yeah.
I have the list right here.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so Enoch, the first one, the one we're not talking about, I just want to get him out of the way first. He was on Cain's side. Cain's side of the timeline. When you look at your Bible references and the genealogies and Genesis and stuff, it leans more towards Seth. Right?
Seth.
You had Adam, Seth,
right.
And then the other ones.
Enosh, they go all the way down the line, right? Yeah.
So Cain had descendants too. But Cain, when he fell away, he murdered his brother Abel.
Right.
And then Seth was born. And Seth followed in his father's footsteps, made the sacrifices. A lot of that goes into detail in Jasher and some other extra biblical texts like the book of Adam and Eve talks about it a lot. And that's going to be one of my series way down the road too. I feel like Enoch's the first one to get started with. And I feel like Enoch is the perfect for the end time generation.
And I'm going to just jump in there and just take a page from your page.
Yeah.
The Book of Enoch was not written to the people in that time, in his time frame. It was written for us who will be at the end.
Yeah.
So this is why there's such a renewed interest in the Book of Enoch, because it's now time for this information to be released so that we'll be able to deal with what's coming. All we have to do is look at the world situations around us, where it's no secret that the Luciferian New World Order agenda, they want a one world government, one world currency, they want a one world religion.
Yeah, and so, they want to chip us, they want to take away our current currency, they want to shut down the free world, that whole New World Order thing, and it's wrapped in with that pedophilia stuff, the human trafficking stuff.
Yeah, so
very sick and twisted stuff.
And the main thing is, the term has been coined fake news. Well, the thing of it is, we really have to know the truth.
Yeah.
And so that we will have a square foundation by which we can go forth and share with people the truth so that they won't be deceived.
Yes.
A great number of them will be deceived because they want to be deceived, frankly. But then there are others that will resist the resistance, the rebellion, as in Star Wars, as it were.
And that stuff's referenced in Daniel, the book of Daniel, when he has that vision of the statue. And then it ties in with Revelations, with John from Revelation, how he saw the end time generations. Enoch saw it. And I think it's also in Isaiah and Ezekiel, too. They saw those end time generations. But what's interesting with John from Revelations And Daniel saw the statue, and at the bottom of the statue, the end time generations, the toes were made of clay and iron. Right?
Which don't mix.
Yeah, which don't mix. And that means there's weakened parts of that New World Order that's going to come that resist them. And so that New World Order can't completely form. But the good news is the Messiah is coming. And the Messiah is going to destroy all that New World Order stuff.
And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to kind of go through some of it in order for it to be fulfilled.
Unfortunately. But yeah, the times of tribulation. And that brings us back to Enoch. And what I like about Enoch, because in First Enoch, in that first chapter, like you said, it talks about, what did you say, for the far off generations.
For the generation,
so
yes.
It wasn't for the far off generation. It was generations, like multiple generations towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if we're not in the absolute last generation, we're one of those last few generations.
Yes.
And that book was preserved for us. And a lot of people are like, well, why is that book preserved for us? Well, it says it in the beginning of Enoch. And then if you look at Daniel and you look in Revelations and you look in other parts of the Bible like Isaiah, these prophets, and Micah too, I believe was one of them, these prophets were told to seal up the books. Some of these books, seal up what the angels told you, seal up what the vision for the end time generations. And what's interesting is, we talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yes.
And the Dead Sea Scrolls were preserved from around the time of Christ by hiding them in those caves. And then that was cracked open in 1948 when Israel became a nation.
Became a nation, right.
And Isaiah talks about, can a nation be born in a day?
And obviously it was, because it did happen in
Reborn.
a day.
Yeah. And
I'm glad you mentioned the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Qumran community.
Okay.
A lot of people don't.
I couldn't pronounce that. Qumran.
Qumran. Yeah, I know. Some of these words.
These are over.
Yeah.
I get tongue twisted.
Qumran community.
Uh-huh.
It's just like it is today. Like you have, the first church of this, the second church of that, the third church of that. Well, within Judaism, there were different sects or different groups.
Okay.
And
Qumran, sects, like sections.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so Qumran was one of them.
Oh,
just to kind of let you know, and let us all know.
Yeah. And then did you notice, like, when you read the Book of Acts, it talks about the sect. These are the Pharisees and the Sadducees.
Yeah,
talks
exactly.
about the followers of Christ. They were nicknamed the sect. And then later in Acts, it says they were first called Christians in Antioch, which was a city in Turkey. That's kind of like another rabbit hole on that one.
Another rabbit hole, which we will go into.
What's interesting is the followers, before they were called Christians, they were called the sect. And then some of the text found in the Dead Sea Scrolls said that they were hidden by the sect. So those were the followers of Christ, knew these scrolls were important, and they hid them. What's interesting, though, is the time period of Enoch. And you brought up earlier something that was interesting to me about when it was written. And you said it was written around the time of Jesus?
These books were available during the time of Jesus. So it was before he got here, while he was here, and after he left.
Right.
So it's basically repeating itself. It's giving us an opportunity to see what was going on. In modern terminology, we seem to think that we've got the edge on everything and everybody.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's not true, because the same information that they had then, we are still using today.
Right. And I like this discussion, and I like where it's going. And I think, like, when I look back in my research about the Book of Enoch and some of the other teachings, it mentioned that Enoch was one of the first. Not everybody believes this, but Enoch was one of the first texts. Okay, and from my research, what I believe I find is, you have the scribes, right?
Scribes.
So in the Hebrew culture, what was the job of the scribes, right? They were supposed to look at the text. They were supposed to preserve the text, right? And when these were first written, they didn't have paper like us. So they wrote them on, like, papaya leaves, I think was one of them.
Papyrus that's out of Egypt, and different types of skins.
And after time, over years, over decades, over centuries, they start to wear thin. And with people reading them, it's not like a book. Even with these books that we have, these modern day books, they wear thin. But with the ancient writings, I believe that the Hebrews, the scribes, would retranslate them. And so one of the things people talk about with the ancient text with Enoch is that it was rewritten, or they thought it dates back to around the time of Jesus, or maybe within that first 200 years after Jesus. But I think the scribes would rewrite them from generation to generation and hand them down.
Yeah, that seems to be the norm. As a matter of fact, and I don't want to steal any of your thunder,
Yeah.
but there are actually 3 books of Enoch, and I'm sure
Yes.
you're going to go into all of that. So the first one seems to be the one everybody validates as the original.
First Enoch.
And then there's Enoch 2, and then there's an Enoch 3.
Yeah.
But those aren't as accurate.
Yeah. So that's really awesome. And I just want to remind our viewers, we have a YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit that like button. Also follow us on Instagram and Facebook for more content.